There's a satisfying lie you tell yourself when you watch your savings account cross $20,000. You think the hard part is over. You think this is the beginning of momentum. But here's what nobody warns you about. The moment you save $20,000, something breaks inside your relationship with money, with work, with the version of yourself you built to get here. And that fracture, that invisible shift, it changes everything more than the money itself ever could. Most people think saving $20,000 is a financial event. It's not. It's a psychological event disguised as a number. And the reason almost nobody talks about what happens next is because what happens next doesn't feel like progress. It feels like vertigo. You'll understand what I mean by the end of this, but not yet. First, I need to show you why the ground you're standing on right now isn't as solid as you think it is. You were told a story when you were young. Maybe not in words, but in structure. And how your parents talked about bills. And how teachers praised good grades because good grades lead to good jobs. And good jobs lead to good salaries. And good salaries lead to a good life. The story was simple. Earn more and you'll feel more free. Get promoted and the pressure goes down. Hit the next number and the tightness in your chest will loosen. And it did loosen for about a week, maybe 2. Then a new normal settled in. A slightly larger apartment, a slightly nicer car, a subscription you forgot to cancel, a dinner tab you picked up because it felt like that's what someone at your level should do. The tightness came back. But now it brought a friend, a quiet confusion, because you're making more than you ever thought you would, and you still feel like you can't breathe. That confusion is the most important feeling you will ever have about money, and you need to stop running from it. Because here's what that confusion is really telling you. It's telling you that income is not the same as freedom. Income is the speed of the treadmill. Freedom is the ability to step off. And right now, even though you're running faster than ever, you can't step off. You know it. You feel it every Sunday night. You feel it when your manager sends a message at 9 p.m. and your stomach drops, not because the message is urgent, but because you realize you have no choice but to respond. Not because they own you, because your expenses own you. Your lifestyle owns you. Your identity as someone who earns this much and lives this way, that owns you. And $20,000 sitting in an account somewhere, untouched, is the first thing you've ever built that doesn't own you back. Think of it like this. Imagine you're standing in a building, a tall one. Glass walls, nice view, climate controlled. Every floor you've climbed represents a raise, a promotion, a better title. You're on the 14th floor now. People on the ground look up and think you've made it. But you know something they don't. There are no stairs in this building. There's only an elevator. And the elevator is controlled by someone else. Your employer, your clients, the market, the economy. You didn't climb here. You were lifted. And the moment whoever controls that elevator decides to send it down, you go down with it. No negotiation, no parachute, no choice. Now imagine something different. Imagine that for the first time on the 14th floor, you find a small door. Behind it is a fire escape. It doesn't go up, it goes down, and it's yours. Nobody controls it. Nobody can lock it. It's ugly. It's narrow. It smells like concrete. But it exists. $20,000 is that door. It doesn't take you higher. It doesn't make the view better. What it does is something far more radical. It gives you a way out that you control. And the moment you know that door is there, the moment you've tested the handle and felt it give, you stop being a passenger in your own building. Something in your posture changes. Something behind your eyes shifts. You start standing differently in rooms where you used to shrink. Not because you're richer, because you're less trapped. And this is where most financial advice completely falls apart. Because most advice is about climbing higher. Earn more, invest more, optimize, compound, scale. But nobody tells you that climbing higher in a building with no stairs is just increasing your dependence on the elevator. Nobody tells you that the most dangerous financial position isn't being broke. It's being successful without options. The person making $40,000 with $12,000 saved has more structural freedom than the person making $150,000 with nothing. That sounds wrong. Sit with it. Because the person earning 40 with savings can survive a bad quarter, a bad boss, a bad decision. They can say no. They can pause. They can think. The person earning 150 with nothing is performing freedom while living in a cage so well decorated they forgot it has bars. Here's something that will start making sense later, but I need to plant it now. The way you make decisions when you have $20,000 saved is neurologically different from how you made decisions before. I don't mean you feel more confident. I mean the architecture of your choices literally changes. The options you see, the risks you're willing to take, the things you're willing to say out loud in a meeting or a negotiation, they shift. And they shift not because you've become someone new, but because you've removed something old. You've removed a specific kind of fear that you didn't even know was running in the background. We'll come back to this. Before that number, before that cushion existed, every decision you made passed through a filter. You weren't aware of the filter. It didn't announce itself, but it was there. Every time you considered asking for a raise, the filter asked, "What if they say no and it gets awkward and I need to leave?" Every time you thought about pushing back on a project that was beneath your skill level, the filter asked, "What if they think I'm difficult and I lose this?" Every time a better opportunity appeared, something risky, something exciting, something that would require 2 months without income, the filter didn't just ask a question. It shut the conversation down before it started. You didn't even get to think about it. The filter killed it in the hallway before it reached the room where decisions are made. That filter is not caution. It's not wisdom. It's the tax you pay for having no margin. And you've been paying it so long, you think it's your personality. You think you're just not a risk taker. You think you're just practical. You're not. You're just broke in a way that doesn't look broke. The moment $20,000 sits in your account long enough that you stop thinking of it as money you might spend, something eerie happens. That filter starts to thin. You notice it first in small ways. Someone says something unreasonable in a meeting, and you respond honestly instead of diplomatically. A client pushes a deadline, and you hold your ground instead of absorbing the pressure. A recruiter reaches out, and instead of ignoring it because the timing isn't right, you take the call. You take the call not because you want to leave, but because you can. That single shift from "I can't afford to explore this" to "I can afford to explore this," it rewires how the world treats you. Because the world doesn't respond to what you have. It responds to what you're willing to walk away from. And now the math starts to matter, but only because the feeling is already true. $20,000, depending on where you live, is roughly 3 to 6 months of compressed survival. Not comfort, survival. That's rent, that's food, that's the electric bill. That's the bare minimum version of your life that keeps you intact while you make a transition. And transitions are where all the value in a career is created. Every significant jump in income, in satisfaction, in alignment between what you do and who you are, every single one of those jumps required a transition, a gap, a moment of not knowing. And every person who never made that jump didn't fail because they lacked talent or ambition. They failed because they couldn't afford the gap. They couldn't survive 60 days of uncertainty. So they stayed. They optimized within the cage. They negotiated a slightly better title, a slightly better salary, in exchange for the same structural dependency. $20,000 doesn't make you wealthy, but it makes you dangerous. It makes you someone who can afford to be honest. And honest people with skills, they don't stay undervalued for long. The math on that is brutal and simple. People who can tolerate a strategic pause earn, on average, significantly more over a 10-year period than people who optimize continuously without stopping. Not because pausing is productive, because pausing allows repositioning. And repositioning is where the jumps happen. You can't jump while both feet are bolted to the floor. Now something begins to shift that you didn't expect. It's not just about career moves or salary negotiations. It's about how you see yourself in the mirror. Before the cushion, your identity was entangled with your income. You were your job title. You were your paycheck. You introduced yourself by what you did because what you did was the only evidence that you were succeeding. After the cushion, a strange separation begins. You start to see your work as something you do, not something you are. And that separation, which sounds small, is the most powerful psychological shift a professional can experience. Because when your identity is fused with your income, every threat to your income is a threat to your identity. You don't just fear losing a job, you fear losing yourself. That's why people stay in roles that are slowly destroying them. It's not laziness, it's existential terror dressed in a suit. $20,000 begins to peel the suit away. You start to develop what can only be described as optionality of self. You realize that you could do something else. Not hypothetically, actually. You could survive the transition. You could handle the gap. You could sit in the silence between one chapter and the next without falling apart. And that realization makes you calmer, quieter, more patient in negotiations, more selective in commitments. You start saying no to things that a year ago you would have accepted with gratitude. Not because you've become arrogant, because you've become solvent enough to have taste. You can finally afford to want what you actually want, instead of wanting whatever is available. But here's exactly where the most dangerous moment lives. And almost everyone walks straight into it. The mistake is not spending the $20,000. Most people disciplined enough to save it are disciplined enough to keep it. The mistake is subtler and far more destructive. The mistake is upgrading your life to match your new sense of security. You feel calmer. You feel more in control. And that feeling of control whispers something very specific. It says, you've earned this. You can loosen up a little. You can move to the nicer apartment now. You can finance the car. You can take the trip. Not because you can't afford discipline, but because the feeling of safety creates the illusion of surplus. And the moment you let your lifestyle inflate to consume the margin you created, you don't just lose the money, you lose the door. The fire escape disappears. You're back on the 14th floor with no way down. But now it's worse. Because now you've tasted what it felt like to have options. You remember the calm. You remember the clarity. And you know it's gone. That is a specific kind of pain that people don't talk about. Losing money you never had is disappointing. Losing freedom you actually felt is devastating. And the cruelest part is that nobody took it from you. You gave it away in a series of small, reasonable, completely justifiable decisions that each felt like progress. A better apartment feels like progress. A new car feels like progress. A lifestyle that reflects your income feels like progress. But progress toward what? If every upgrade makes you more dependent on the income that funds it, you're not progressing. You're tightening the strap. You're climbing higher in the building while bricking over the fire escape behind you. The people who get this right, the ones who cross 20,000 and let it fundamentally change them instead of temporarily comfort them, they don't look different from the outside. They don't post about it. They don't celebrate it. In fact, they do something that would confuse most of their peers. They keep living almost exactly the same way they lived before. Not because they're cheap, because they understand something that most people won't learn until it's too late. The purpose of the first 20,000 is not to be spent. It's not even to be invested. Not yet. The purpose of the first 20,000 is to exist, to sit there, to be felt, to quietly, persistently restructure how you think, how you negotiate, how you respond to pressure, how you make decisions under uncertainty. It is not a financial tool. It is a psychological weapon. And the moment you spend it, you disarm yourself. Remember the question from the beginning? Why does everything change even more after you save 20,000? Not why does it change? Why does it change more? And now you know. Because the first change was financial. You had something you didn't have before. But the second change, the deeper one, is structural. Your relationship to risk changes. Your tolerance for bad situations changes. Your ability to wait, to be patient, to be silent when silence is the most powerful thing you can offer in a negotiation or a career decision, that changes. And those changes compound in ways that no savings account ever could. Wealth is not money. Wealth is the number of bad options you can survive without fear. $20,000 doesn't make you wealthy, but it makes you someone who can sit in a room where everyone else is afraid and feel nothing. Not because you don't care, because you can afford to. That's what changes. Not your bank account, your nervous system. And once your nervous system changes, everything else follows. Quietly, slowly, without anyone noticing except you. And you'll know it happened not because you feel excited, but because one morning, on a random Tuesday, you'll wake up and the tightness will be gone. Not because anything external shifted, because the door is still there, and you didn't brick it over. There's a satisfying lie you tell yourself when you watch your savings account cross $20,000. You think the hard part is over.